Good evening, guys. So welcome back to another episode of Not So Late Night Show. And of course, since we have started the previous few episodes of Not So Late Night Show talking about Malaysia banks, naturally a request for the other not mentioned or not analyzed Malaysia banks will come into the request. And today we will be covering another popular candidate as an investment grade kind of bank to actually look into. So one of the key strengths of the bank that we'll be talking today, which is CIMB Group Holdings Berhad, would be the more, I would say, superior net interest margin. And if you look back at most banks' business model, which is to lend out money and then earn interest on top of it, straightforward, the initial thought is actually or would be that since the net interest margin is so good and so great, maybe it would actually qualify this bank as a better bank in terms of investment. So let's find out more in today's Not So Late Night Show by looking deep into what CIMB does and also the strengths and benefits and also the fiscal year 2020 numbers ever since it recovered potentially from the COVID pandemic. And of course, the disclaimer, we will be talking about the results and also the so-called upcoming prospects of the banks, but do take note, this is not meant to be a buy, hold or sell decision. If you really want to take a deeper look, we really advise you to look deeper, analyze deeper before you make any investment decision. So I'll go straight into the business information or the business model of CIMB Group Holdings, passing it to Chun Beng to take us through what business is CIMB actually doing.
Yep. So, as usual, before we look into all the financial figures, we wanted to take you through on what CMB is all about, and then how they evolve from a normal small bank, and then until they have so many branch in Southeast Asia, right? So, maybe let's get started with some of the history. So basically, some of the key highlight or key milestone that CMB Bank has is they started off with this name, PBSM, Pertanian Barring Sanwa Multinational Bank. And then the establishment of this bank is actually launched by the Prime Minister Tun Abdul Razak back in those days. And then subsequently, the name got changed to CIMB. Of course, a lot of people make jokes around CIMB basically stand for Chinese Indian Malay Bank. But the actual name or actual definition behind this CIMB is basically stand for Commerce International Merchants Banker Berhad after the acquisition by Bank of Commerce. So this is the origin of the name itself. But of course, right now, me and you usually will call them as CIMB, right? And then of course, after the changes of the name into CIMB, so subsequently they start to evolve and grow, and then this is some of the CIMB tower where all this red color is something that probably familiar to you. I mean, in Malaysia, it's either you go to the yellow color, which is Maybank, or red color stamped by CIMB, or the slightly darker red, which is represented by Public Bank. So, and of course, the famous octopus is their so-called ambassador back in those days. But I think right now, you don't see them that often anymore, right? So, some of the fun fact about CMB that you should know is basically it used to run by Nazir Razak. Basically, he's the brother to Najib Razak, our previous Prime Minister. And of course, both of them is the son of Tun Abdul Razak, right? And then subsequently, they actually operate or run by Tengku Zafro, which who right now basically changed into a position of the financial minister in Malaysia. So this is the guy behind CMB along the years, right? And what makes CMB different in the earlier days, of course, back in my day during the university time, is they are very popular with their CMB clicks. The time where online bankings or you need to do online transfer using the website or app, CMB clicks is always the forefront. They are the first one to introduce into all these things. But of course, recently there has been hit by a lot of issue. That's why I purposely put the image on the right that actually tell you sometimes they tend to face a lot of IT problem, cannot load, cannot do transfer. But nevertheless, in terms of all this technology or digital initiative, I would say they are still quite forefront, and then of course compete quite aggressively with Maybank. And other than that, they also have this chatbot or the smart assistant called Eva that they launched into the CIMB clicks, right? So another thing that you should technically focus into it is the relationship between CIMB and the popular touch and go e-wallets. So this is basically how you should see it. CIMB own like 100% of touch and go, so not touch and go digitals. Touch and go digital is the one that actually own the wallet, and basically he's owned by touch and go and groups, which is a China-based company that behind them Alibaba's and gang. And they also have other investors that actually co-own these TNG digitals. In early of this year, basically they actually get some form of investment from Bound Wave Capital Management, and then it allows them to actually continue with their expansion in mobile payment ecosystem. And this make CIMB to have a one-off revaluation gains in early this year. But of course, most of their reports that we should take out all this into consideration because it got to be one-off, right? And then beside Maybank trying very hard to actually promote their internal so-called e-wallets or QR payment app called MAE, actually Touch and Go wallet is the one that actually grabbing the markets. So it's quite important for you guys to take note on how all these things link together. Basically, they are linked, but not 100% owned due to all these structures. And of course, other than that, they also put a lot of focus into the digital initiative. While a lot of technology or IT issue actually appears in the past few years, you almost always see a lot of jokes on CIMB clicks in the internet, but nevertheless, it's still up and running and still serving a lot of clients. But if you talk about within digital initiative itself, they launched Go Plus under Touch and Go e-wallets, which basically allow you to allow all the e-wallet user to make investment. So you basically just need to put your unused e-wallet fund into a separate investment account, and then it will allow you to earn some interest. But when you need to use it, you can straight away withdraw it. So all these things is seamless. So it's one of a kind, or I can say it's first in Malaysia. So it's something that is quite important. And when we talk about digital initiative by a bank, and compared to the remaining bank in Malaysia, of course, the homegrown CIMB bank are having the best presence in ASEAN. If you compare with, let's say, Public Bank and also Maybank. So beside Malaysia as the home ground, they also have a lot of influence in CIMB, Indonesia, and also Thailand. They also have some small operating branches in Singapore, Cambodia, and so on. So this is basically telling you what is the country they have operation in, and then different focus in different country. Malaysia, of course, they are putting their focus across all the segment. But if you wanted to focus into how Indonesia economy can influence the growth of CIMB Bank, basically they are looking into consumer and SME and some high quality wholesales. While Singapore, they just put into a very niche market and also wholesales. Thailand is about the same, but the rest is just bank, and some of the country they only focus into selective instrument. So, for example, they try to leverage on certain partnership to have their influence in those countries. For example, Philippines, that we have shown it in the last row. So in terms of contribution, if you talk about financial years 2020, Malaysia still the most, followed by Indonesia and Thailand. While the rest, all in all, they contribute about 7% in terms of the revenue. Something to take note before I pass the session into Jupan is ever since the hit of pandemic, the foreign shareholding actually dropping for a month-to-month basis. Of course, it go into slightly stable ever since June 2020, where it hover about 20 to 22%. I would say probably it's not a very healthy sign because a lot of time if you have a lot of foreign investor means you have a lot of foreign investment fund for you to actually grow your companies. But of course, it are able to substitute by retail investment like me and you, but it might not be sufficient. So this is some of the signal that some of the foreign investors are losing some of the confidence or interest into CIMB Bank. But of course, we should continue to monitor. Is it purely because of pandemic or some other reason? Right. So this basically sums up what CIMB is all about from their operation. They are the one that able to support across ASEAN region, and they are quite forefront into digital initiative. Although a lot of hiccup that happened in the recent year that CIMB clicks always down. But nevertheless, if you talk about mobile app itself, e-wallet is one of the battleground that I would say they are one of the top if compared to the remaining bank. So when with all these things that put together, from a bank perspective, we still need to go back to the core numbers on how are they performing from their asset quality and so on. So I'll pass to Jupan to continue with the session.
All right, thank you, Junbing. So of course, after going through the business, how into digitalization CIMB is, of course, you have to actually deeper into their numbers, which actually would be one of the so-called feedback mechanisms that whether the bank is being run well, costs are being well managed, right? So we'll take a deeper look at the numbers, the financial info, and also quite importantly, would be the so-called performances the bank has actually registered since we will be looking at the fiscal year where the bank got impacted by COVID-19. So of course, before going into the numbers, just a little shout out to what we are actually doing for our Kaya Plus Premium Club members. So apart from what we are currently sharing right now on YouTube, which is free, which is, you can view it as many times as you can. You can even ask questions in the comment section, give suggestions on videos of companies that you want us to analyze and also share. We do have some sort of premium service that we offer to our club members. So what we do is there will be a private Facebook group where we talk more about stocks, the so-called tendency and frequency of getting back to our club members would be far higher compared to YouTube. Of course, there will also be certain niche live topics that we will cover on a monthly basis as well. Here are some of the information and also the examples. So we will be covering companies and investment approach on different countries like China and also US. And of course, we also do have our premium articles and analysis on companies in the US and also from Malaysia as well. So of course, we will also have certain special theme kind of discussions, which we call the thematic transcripts. So we have already covered electric vehicles in the early part of the year in April, and then in July we covered semiconductor, where we will go through the entire semiconductor stream. And coming up in the month of September, we will be dipping deep into e-commerce. So the e-commerce companies, the warehouse logistics, what are the kind of companies that will actually benefit if e-commerce becomes more and more prevalent in our spending habits. So that's it. So we will definitely go back to the numbers of CIMB Group Holdings Berhad. So you can see that it actually grew along the past 10 years, right? It grew at a very slow but steady pace, right? But in the middle part of it, of course, there are a lot of hiccups when CIMB is trying to expand globally in the Southeast Asia region and also a little bit parts of Asia. You can see that some part of the years, especially in 2014, 2015, 2016, there are a lot of potential impairment losses that the bank has to temporarily suffer because of its expansion plan to Indonesia and also Thailand as well. And of course, fiscal year 2020 is one of the year that CIMB Group Holdings got hit really hard. The allowance for impairment actually evaporated or actually take up a lot of the net profit and then hence giving the bank a very, very low net profit attributable to the shareholders, right? Of course, if you look at the so-called contribution of the revenue segments of CIMB, it is still a bank which focuses or relies heavily on the lending business. So that complements in some ways very well with the high net interest margin. The more loans that CIMB is able to push out and still maintain its net interest margin curve, you can see that it can actually be some sort of catalyst or even some sort of support that CIMB might continue to do well if you look at the contributions from the income from Islamic operation banking and also the net interest income as well. So just a small portion of it is actually coming from the net non-interest income. So this is a bank that actually relies heavily on its lending business. But that aside, that's just the one side of the story. You need to actually look at the other side of the picture on the cost expenses, which we'll be touching next. So you can look here, CIMB actually is one of the banks that maybe if you compare with its other peers, right, it really lags a bit behind in terms of the operating expenses. But nevertheless, the good thing that you can actually see is that, in terms of the net interest income, they actually managed to, stabilize it during the past few quarters where, COVID-19 had actually put a very good heavy impact on its fiscal year 2020 performances. But nevertheless, on the top side of it, it's still a little bit stable. Although you can maybe argue that for the latest quarter in 2021, the non-interest income actually got a little bit of impact, but that is not something really much to get frustrated or get the investors should be a little bit less perturbed by it, right? So it's just because for what happened in fourth quarter of 2020. So on a Q-on-Q basis, you will see a slight downturn, which should not be something too alarming. So in the next, you will look deeper into the operating expenses, which we think that one aspect that CIMB Group Holdings can actually improve compared to the other banks. But if you just look at the improvement captured or registered by CIMB Group Holdings over the few past quarters since first quarter of 2020 until the latest first quarter of 2021, you can see that they actually improve and pull down their cost to income ratio significantly, which means that there is less cost per income registered by the bank, and this is actually one of the more positive signs that we have actually seen, apart from the net impairment losses that eats into the profit, at least from the cost-wise is actually normalizing, and the management is actually putting a lot of efforts to pull down the cost-to-income ratio. Of course, talking about one of the key aspects, which is the loans and also the potential of CIMB growing its loan, you can see that from a few aspects in terms of the allowance of the coverage, it has been improving. The gross impaired loans has been stabilizing around 3.4 to 3.6 region. And then, of course, the loan loss charge is actually coming down also as of first quarter of 2021 compared to the trend set in the whole year of fiscal year 2020. So it is in some ways some sort of improvement, even though fiscal year 2020 was a very tough year for most of the banks. And of course, talking about how a bank like CIMB Group Holdings, which relies heavily on lending business to grow the gross loans. It is also a bank that, as we mentioned just now, having presence in a lot of Southeast Asia countries. So you can see that in terms of loan growth by countries, Malaysia actually act out a little bit of the small growth, but for the other performing country or the other countries within CIMB Group Holdings, you can see that there is actually a decrease in the so-called growth. So for countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and also Singapore, these are the regions that are actually very badly hit by COVID-19, and the bank has actually registered some contraction in terms of the loan growth, right? And of course, how aggressive the bank can push out loans depends also on the CASA ratio, which is the current account and savings account ratio. The more deposits the bank can actually receive, it will have more ample buffer, ample depositor monies to actually push it out as loans. So you can see that from that aspect, Malaysia is still in tandem with the so-called loan growth. The CASA actually improved by 7%, but of course the other countries, like we mentioned just now, like Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore, actually registered a drop. And this is something that hopefully for those who are more positive on a recovery theme or recovery pattern by CIMB Group Holdings, you should actually continue to monitor that the depositor growth and also the loan growth by each of these regional countries where CIMB Group Holdings has a presence actually comes to a stop and starts to register some sort of positive numbers. And of course, if you look at the historical ROE and the ROA, things are not that pretty. Of course, due to the pandemic, the net profit actually got erased pretty much from the impairment losses and also the allowance for any credit defaults. But then again, if you are someone who is positive on the overall recovery theme playing around Malaysia, of course, this would be just one of the one-off results that you have to bear and also have to stomach if you are a current CIMB Group Holdings shareholder. But of course, if you want to compare it to other banks out there, definitely other banks are more resilient, have shown better results, but that is from another perspective of it. In terms of share price beating, CIMB Group Holdings is actually one that has actually experienced the most in terms of the sell-off, as we showed just now, in terms of the foreign shareholding. It has decreased significantly, but if the recovery is coming into place, maybe in terms of the potential to appreciate and also the presence that it has around so many countries in Southeast Asia, probably this bank is poised to actually see share prices appreciate the fastest and the highest, since that in terms of valuation, it is actually at the lowest, right? Of course, talking about valuation, there are also a few numbers to bring you guys through. So in terms of valuation, there are a few metrics that investors would like to actually use. Normally, it will be the PE ratio and also the dividend yield. So from the PE ratio point of view, CIMB Group Holdings is actually trading at around 14 times PE, and in terms of dividend yield, is at around 1% of dividend yield. Of course, the bank got impacted in the financial year of 2020. Therefore, in terms of dividend payouts, it also got impacted. But we are talking about a potential recovery and a potential rebound in terms of the performances. And yeah, you should actually check deeper and look deeper whether the theme or the so-called thesis that CIMB will continue to show some sign of recovery, hence making the share price actually appreciate in terms of the net profit and also the potential future dividend payout as well, as one of the so-called guidance to actually invest into these banks of Malaysia. Of course, some of the key metrics to actually touch base also would be in terms of the ROE, which we have seen right here in the first quarter has already rebounded to 9.3% compared to 1.5% in fourth quarter of 2020. And of course, in terms of the net interest margin, the bank actually adjusts also the so-called current account and savings account interest rate. Hence, you can see a slight uptick in improvement in the net interest margin also as well. Of course, the cost to income continues to come down from 49.4% down to 48.7%. And of course, I think other than that, some of the good signs that you see would be the improved allowance coverage and also the loan loss charge, which actually came down as well. Overall, I would say that it would be more of I would say, a recovery play and recovery bet that CIMB will actually continue to do well for the upcoming few quarters. If that is the case, then probably in terms of the share price, currently is a bit potentially undervalued. But if things do not recover, of course, the share price will continue to stay muted as of currently as well. All right. So of course, I'll pass to Chun Beng. What are your thoughts and what are your verdict on CIMB as a potential bank with upside in terms of recovery?
Yeah, I think to summarize, after we have covered Maybank and also public bank, so you can literally see this way lah. In terms of advantages, the net interest margin definitely is one of the highest if you talk about CIMB Bank, which means they are taking higher risk as well. That's why when pandemic come, they got hit quite badly compared to the rest. But like what Jupan mentioned is the worst has come to an end or not? If yes, probably they are the one that can rebound better because they got hit the most, right? Secondly is although arguably Maybank has managed to pick up in terms of digital initiative with the launch of so many different campaign and also the very successful rollout of MAE app. I would say Maybank got secret weapons, and the secret weapon is working with a very strong partner called Ant Group. So behind Ant Groups is actually Alibaba and with the popular e-wallet in China called Alipay. So technology, all those things is definitely there, and they can work together and offer you the best service. That's why you can see enough initiative launched by different e-wallets. Touch and Go should be one of the best among all. And lately, they have managed to increase their wallet size into 20,000 by Bank Negara. I think this is to help more people to actually put in more money into the Gold Plus investment product that I mentioned just now. So all these things can be a gateway for CIMB Bank to pull in more user because there isn't any entry to be a e-wallet user. And then of course you got be a student, I can take my $10 didn't use, I put into the Gold Plus account, and this technically become the deposit goes into CIMB Bank, right? So this is all the upside, but of course the disadvantage that is not only relying on Malaysia growth, you also need to rely on Indonesia and Thailand. If they are not doing well, partially they also will be impacted. Of course, on the other hand, this is also the advantage, not heavily rely on Malaysia. If Malaysia case continue to be high, but the other region can help to save it as well. So this pretty much sum up everything about CIMB banks. If you are someone that more aggressive, then definitely you should ditch public bank. Your public bank is like a very still water, always stable and calm, but it can go up stably. With just one big concern, a lot of people are trying to say, because Red Bank maybe got successor problem, till now still technically controlled by the founder, without a clear sign on which guy they're actually going to take on. But of course, the management is all very seniors and very experienced. Right? So if nothing, I have nothing else to add. Hopefully, if you guys like the sharing, remember to give us a like or share or subscribe. This definitely will help us to put our effort to actually share more stocks in the futures.
Yep. So of course, if you still have any other banks that you want us to cover, want us to analyze and share it to you guys on our Not So Late Show, do also hit it up at the comment section, and we'll take a look, and we'll definitely do a similar kind of analysis and also sharing with you guys. But that's it for us today. Of course, let us know in the comment section whether you are someone who is swinging towards a potential recovery, hence giving CIMB Group Holdings some sort of the room to appreciate, or are you someone who is still a little bit pessimistic on the COVID conditions, not just Malaysia, but also the Southeast Asia region, where CIMB Group might continue to stay muted and also subdued by the so-called near-term headwind challenges? Let us know in the comments your thoughts and your views. But that's it for us today. We'll see you in our next episode of Not So Late Show. And of course, as I said, do let us know what company you want us to cover next in the comments. So see you next week. Have a great weekend. See you soon. Bye-bye.